In this video, I'm going to talk about who is behind these markets, right? In the last video, I discussed what is a market. Go watch that if you haven't. Right now, I'm on TradingView, right? It's the platform where you can view charts in different markets and see in real time what is happening in the market and possibly even in the economy, right? So this is the S&P, the top 500 companies. I talked about that in my last video. And right now, it's just going to be a brief explanation of who is actually, behind the markets, right? So first off, you guys got to realize that trading in general is so complicated and so complex, but it's not to scare you. It's more about the idea that there's endless possibilities and there's so many ways to trade the market and there's so many people, and it's not just a question that can be answered with, retail traders and institutions. There is so much more than that, and I'm going to give you a little brief understanding on each of them. So first off, retail traders. That is what I am. That is what you will be. That is what people who aren't in an institutional or work for a company, right? So they use their own capital. They go on the charts and they try to make money and turn that capital. And that is where you guys hear that 97% of people fail. That is where that tactic or that percentage comes in. 97% of retail traders fail and 2% break even on a yearly time frame, and only 1% of all people actually make money from day trading, right? So retail traders, right, people like you, everyday people trading their own money from home or possibly beginners. And with retail traders, you can range from someone very, very first day all the way, they've been trading for years and years and years and years, and they have 1,000 monitors and they're getting the speed of information from multiple subscriptions, but it doesn't matter because anyone can make money in the markets if you do it the right way. And then professional traders, you guys know that their entire job is to trade for a living, and their speed of information that they receive is way better than retail traders. Not saying you can't make money from retail trading, but you just got to understand these people have tools, machines, data, analytics, full experts, people who went and got degrees for this subject and in finance or even mathematics, and builds models to trade in the market, right? Either they're discretionary trading and trying to find, reacting off of news events possibly, or having mathematical models, so literal algorithms that are completely hands-off, other than them making the algos and them turning them on and off, that are trading their capital, their firm's capitals, and their company's capital, moving the market up and down. So these, most of the times are the market movers. Institutions are like big players like banks, hedge funds, investment firms moving a large amount of money. So we got retail traders, professional traders, institutions, like I talked about, the algorithms, market makers, firms whose entire job it is to buy and sell. There's always someone to trade against, and every time there is a sell, there is a buy, and that is what essentially liquidity is, right? So every single time this market moves, and there's so much liquidity in the S&P, and what liquidity is just think of it as a pool of money where every single time you want to take out that money, you can if there's a large enough sample and there's enough trading in the market. There's a large enough liquidity pool and liquidity sample that you can constantly click buy or sell, because every time you click buy, there's a seller on the other end, right? So that's why if you ever started a meme coin or some of these other coins, you can't even buy, you can't even sell at some point because there's not enough liquidity to take from the market. There's not enough buyers and sellers across from you selling when you're trying to buy, or vice versa. When you are trying to sell, there's not a buyer. So, right? So every time there's a buy, there's a sell. And yeah, it's essentially, right, if you go in my other video, I essentially talk about what these markets are. So S&P, again, time period, 5 minutes, right? We're agreeing on this price at this time. And there's institutions, there's professional traders, retail traders, and algorithms all trying to make money. So it's extremely competitive, and these markets are so efficient. What do I mean by efficiency? If you ever heard any trader say, hey, these markets are some of the most efficient markets in the world, is what I mean that every single time there is an inefficiency, there's basically an area that's lacking efficiency, they can find an edge for and build strategies and models and mathematical models to make the market more efficient, right? So let's just say, I can draw it out. Let me back step a little bit, but So the market's supposed to do this, essentially, right? And every single time the market kind of like goes up too much, people are selling or buying, or mainly selling, right? To get it back to its perceived price. And it's the price that people want it to be at, the price that it should be at, the price that it's being traded at. So a lot of times this happens. And think about these lines moving at a micro scale in seconds. So, it goes up and maybe one of them falls out of line. I don't know. Market movers are essentially, there's models that are buying and selling in such little instance or in big. There's so many different variants, there's so many possibilities that are essentially making the market more efficient. So every single time there's an inefficiency, that's the word I wanted, inefficiency, like something going out of line that wasn't actually priced in, yes, the market goes up and down, right? And it can go in a straight line or going up. That doesn't mean there's an inefficiency. The market should go up naturally, right? We can look at the S&P on a, hourly, or let's go the month, right? The month chart. You can see that it naturally goes up. So does this mean there's efficiencies every time it goes up? No. It's just every single time that price is not at what it's supposed to be at and price moves too far ahead from its perceived price and the price that it's being valued at, right? Like if we just go all the way down right here, there's people buying to get in that price, and there's people that think it's a discounted price, and there's so many models that play into that. So that's what I mean by that. So the market is extremely efficient, meaning there's so many buyers and sellers and models and professionals that are moving the market in a certain direction, so it's extremely hard to get an edge, right? Because it's constantly being traded at a time, and any little inefficiency that's happening, like, the market moves slightly out of place, or, this price isn't supposed to be this high, and my models calculate this, it's going to be traded immediately to go back to its perceived value. So that's what I mean. You can kind of see that S&P, if you throw your money in S&P over a span of 10 years, it beats any hedge fund, and that is true. So you just got to realize that there's an incredible amount of inefficiencies, and the people you're trading against are experts that have more knowledge than you and get more knowledge than you, and the speed that they get it at is faster than you. So that's essentially what, who's behind these markets: algorithms, hedgers, market makers, institutions, professional and retail traders like yourself. And I would think it's around 30% of retail traders actually make up of the market. And a little misconception is there's no algorithm, or the institutions aren't hunting your stop loss or trying to target retail traders, right? Professional traders. That's not a thing. They're targeting inefficiencies. So an edge is an inefficiency in the market. And I gave that little brief example just so you guys can kind of wrap your heads around what actually happens in the market. But that's essentially it, right? So a lot of competition. Well, it's very, very hard. And that's where the 1% comes into as retail traders, beginners, people that are just on computers. And the more you get into this, maybe you'll have more and more computers, but it is legit. You can make money in these markets. This isn't too scary, it's just to tell you the truth. So that's the video. Next video, it's going to be a little bit of a good one, surprise, and hopefully you learn stuff. Ask any questions in the comments. But yeah, that's for the video for today.